Good evening. Thank you for attending tonight for our second round of PSEG-led town hall meetings for the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project, or the MPRP. Stakeholder engagement is incredibly important for a project like this, and we do appreciate your time to offer feedback and ask your questions. We'd also like to thank the Carroll County Commissioners for lending us this facility, or allowing us to use this facility tonight. I do want to remind everyone that building a transmission line is an incredibly long process, and we truly are in the beginning of that process. So PSEG will continue to listen to your questions and take your feedback. My name is Teresa. I've been with PSEG in the nuclear unit for 12 years, and I am here to facilitate tonight. I will not be answering any questions, and what I'm here to do is help you ask as many questions as you can. So we're going to have some ground rules in a few minutes, but the goal is to give you a brief presentation to give you that background and then get lots of questions and answers tonight. Briefly, I want to locate the ladies' rooms are up front, the men's rooms are in the back. We have fire extinguishers on the sides of the walls. Our emergency exits are over on this side where you walked in. There's an AED in the lobby. In case of an emergency, there are uniformed officers throughout the facility, so please don't hesitate to use them. As far as the program goes tonight, with our Q&A, I again want to make sure that we give you enough opportunity to answer as many questions or ask as many questions as possible. So I'm going to have to make sure that I move the program along, and I want to give everyone 2 minutes to ask your question. That's not to get an answer, that's to ask your question. If you decide to take that 2 minutes to make a statement, that's absolutely fine. But make sure that if you have a question, get it in within that 2 minutes so that we can give you your answer. When you entered the room, there were tables there that you could put your name in to ask a question. You didn't tell me the question, you just put your name in. I'm going to receive those lists, and I will call folks up 5 names at a time. We'll have a microphone right here in the front, so when I call your name, you can get in that line in front of the microphone. Just announce your name when you ask your question so I can mark you off on the list. And we'll try and get through as many as we can tonight, as long as we're all respectful and we listen to that timing that I'm going to give you, okay? So we will take a brief 5 or 10 minute break, possibly around 7:30. And again, our objective for tonight is to hear your questions, give you more information, and provide you with some of your answers that you have. PSEG definitely needs this time to hear you and to offer you answers to your questions, so we appreciate it. So right now, I'm going to turn the microphone. Actually, I'm going to introduce my panel. So Jason, our project manager.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Jason, I'm the project director for the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project.
Good evening, Mike Hayes. Working as a consultant on a project with 33 years experience in transmission.
Roger Trudeau, a manager of real estate for PSEG.
Good afternoon, Jim Gilroy, Public Affairs, PSEG.
Jason's going to come up now and share a few slides with you to answer some of the questions that most of you have.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, again. So I just want to go through a bunch of slides here. We did hear a lot of feedback from yesterday's session that you would like me to be a little bit briefer with the slides so we could get to the Q&A session a lot quicker. So I will try to be as brief as possible. It's not because I don't want to give those slides their due course or you know, maybe what they potentially need, but I'd like to get to the Q&A as soon as possible. So just bear with me, please. And some of these slides you've seen before, some of them are new. But I just want to walk you through how MPRP came to be. So before I start, in terms of getting into the specifics of the project, I just want to briefly go through how our electric grid works. So there's really three main components to how basically the lights stay on in this room. There's power plants or generating stations that create electricity, oil, gas, nuclear type plants. These tend to be dispersed regionally throughout states, throughout regions. Some states have more than others. And so what happens is you have this transmission grid, which is really the centerpiece of this slide here. And you may recognize those as either overhead or underground transmission lines. Some people call them high voltage lines, high tension towers. And basically this creates a spider web of sorts between the generating stations and ultimately where electricity is utilized. And that leads us to the right-hand side of this slide, which is the local distribution system. It could be overhead or underground. You may recognize as wood poles on your streets. That's typically served, at least in Maryland, mostly by Potomac Edison and Baltimore Gas and Electric, your local distribution companies. The Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project is an enhancement to the transmission portion of the electric system. Next slide. So just a couple things on why we are here today. So overall, PJM, who's the regional transmission organization, the best way to think of them is they are effectively the planners for the highways of electricity in our region. They cover all or parts of 13 states, plus the District of Columbia, so that includes Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, West Virginia, Ohio, and the like. And they look in the future, and they make sure that basically they could keep the lights on. And so they see a couple of things going on, all really at the same time. There's growth in electricity demand. That means demand is going up due to things such as, due to mostly from electrification, whether it's from electric vehicles, HVAC systems like heat pumps and the like, and also, of course, data centers as well. And what's also happening at the same time, so again, you have demand going up. You also have the creators of electricity actually coming offline. So when you see thermal generators retiring at a rapid pace, what a thermal generator is, it's a power plant that creates electricity via heat, right? Burn oil, burn gas, burn coal. A thermal generator is not wind, it's not solar. And so what PJM's seeing at the same time, demand going up, supply going down, a lot of the supply that's coming on in the system doesn't have the same characteristics as the generating stations coming off the system, and that's creating a lot of issues. So what PJM says is, right, a lot of what they're seeing starting to come online is what's called intermittent and limited duration resources. All that means is you can't tell a wind turbine to generate electricity, it needs wind. You could tell an oil plant to turn on. You could tell a gas plant to turn on. You could keep it on for a very long time. So PJM is dealing with this conundrum of how to plan a system to keep the lights on. So to get a little bit more specific on Maryland, again, a lot of these are the same items. This is information from PJM. They take input from local distribution companies such as Potomac Edison, BG&E, and this is actually comes from a fact sheet that they put together on Maryland's energy landscape. And so in Maryland, they are seeing increased electricity demand. They are seeing generators retiring without replacement generation coming on to meet that. And then finally, the one point that they make is that today, Maryland imports about 40% of its energy needs. First of all, there is nothing technically wrong with that. We are part of an interregional grid. There are states that import more than they use. There are states that export more than they use. But if you rely on imports, you are ever more reliant on that interregional transmission system. Next slide, please. So in terms of generator retirements, we heard a lot of questions about generator retirements. Where are they occurring? Have there been any plants in Maryland retiring? And so what we're showing here is that this has actually been an issue that's been going on for quite some time. So over the last decade, about 8,500 megawatts worth of generators have retired. And to put that in perspective, if you think about Calvert Cliffs nuclear plant, we all know a nuclear plant is a very large generator of electricity. That's about 1,800 megawatts. So that's multiple nuclear plants worth of generators that have come offline without sufficient replacements in many cases. And what PJM's seeing in the future is an additional 2,800 megawatts of generators retiring, and you can see some of those plants on the right-hand side of the screen there. So why MPRP? Why are we here talking about the Maryland Piedmont reliability project, which by now I'm sure you've heard a decent amount about. So first things first, I just want to go through a little bit more about PJM to put in perspective about who they are. We are not PJM. The folks on this stage are not PJM, but PJM is a regional transmission organization. They are regulated by FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And basically, one of the things that they are responsible for is the reliability of the transmission system, the highway of electricity, in the regions that are shown and shaded on the right-hand side of the slide. There's many of these throughout the U.S. This happens to be the one that covers the area where we are today. And again, it's all parts of 13 states plus the District of Columbia. And what PJM does is they look in the future, because they know these projects take a while to build. They need to look into the future, and in this case, they were looking in the years 2027 and 2028, and they were seeing two things converging in opposite directions. About just over 11,000 megawatts of generators retiring. And again, to put that in perspective, Calvert Cliffs nuclear plant is about 1,800 megawatts, so that's just over 6 Calvert Cliffs coming offline regionally, not just in Maryland, but regionally, and 7,500 megawatts worth of load growth, which, again, you could put it in terms of generators, but if you put it in terms of homes, it's equal to the amount of about 6 million homes, just to put that in perspective. And one of the issues that Maryland faces is the eastern part of Maryland, or what PJM is calling the eastern part of Maryland, doesn't have that much transmission infrastructure. And I do have a slide coming up that really kind of shows you what that looks like. So PJM service area in Maryland. So what you're seeing on the screen here, I'm just going to describe what you're seeing because this is a relatively new slide that some of you may not have seen before if you've seen me speak. What you are looking at there in red is the bulk transmission system. This is the backbone of our electric grid, the 500 kV system. This is like the Route 95, Route 70s of the electric system. Without it, we regionally, I should say PJM regionally, would never be able to maintain the balance of generation with demand. And so this system moves power within states and between states. And one thing I want to draw your attention to is just by way of example, right? You see Maryland, you see where the B in BG is, we're physically right, was it northwest of there, and you'll see a line. And that is a single 500 kV line. And one of the issues that the grid faces, it's been an issue, is that there's only one line that connects that north to south. And why that is an issue is because Maryland's an importer and Pennsylvania is actually a huge exporter of energy. There's a couple of states that are huge exporters. Pennsylvania is one of them. And so when you think about the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project, it effectively parallels that existing right-of-way in terms of the serving the electric needs. And the other question that we've received a lot is how does the 500 kV system, how does a project like the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project serve me, right? How does it keep the lights on here? Because if you look at the 500 kV system, there's not that many substations. Many times a 500 kV line could go 40 miles past your house, drop into a substation, it drops into a lower voltage line, and will actually backtrack. That's just the way our grid is set up. That's the way our planners thought it most efficiently to set the grid up. And what you are looking at on the slide there, it's a little messy, and I'm just going to try to walk you through what you're seeing, is if you see the D in Maryland, and you look just to the right of that, that pink or red line, that's that single 500 kV line that you saw on the previous slide, right? Maryland's really, you know, the actual words of Maryland are basically right where we're sitting today. And what you'll see there, if you follow that line along, you'll see it drop into these circles. Those circles, those white circles, represent substations. Those substations are where the energy gets transformed from 500 kV, sometimes to 230 kV, 138 kV, or 115 kV. And those are the smaller transmission lines that will ultimately typically go to smaller substations that ultimately turn that electricity, for lack of a better way of explaining it, into the wood poles that you see on your street. So for example, the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project will drop in at Daub Substation. Daub Substation basically serves areas east and west of that, as evidenced by the screen, and north and south as well. And then also, because the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project offloads that existing line, it also helps that line serve that northern circle in the upper right-hand corner, which serves a lot of Baltimore and some in Carroll County as well. So just wanted to walk you through that. You know, again, these slides will naturally be posted if anybody wants to look at them a little bit deeper. I want to get a little bit into energy pricing. That is, for those that have seen the news on energy prices in and around Maryland, you'll see that there's concern about them going up. And so what PJM does, right, PJM manages the transmission system, but they also run a market. And so very much like the laws of supply and demand really apply to any other product, right? If there's not enough supply, there's too much demand, it tends to drive prices up. And if if that becomes more in equilibrium, it tends to drive prices lower. PJM runs a similar market where people, companies, we buy and sell energy. And what PJM has seen over the last 5 years is historically, the Maryland, if you look at BG, for example, you'll see $44 per megawatt hour. That's just a unit of energy. And you'll see, for example, DP&L, which is, right, not too far away, that's Delaware. And you'll see that there's a huge difference in pricing there. And the reason why that is, and again, this shows up in the rates you're paying today, these are historical prices, this is showing up in the electric bills you see today. But what this is telling us is that there is an imbalance on the system. The market's basically told us, at least over the last 5 years at least, that Maryland is paying more because there's too much what's called congestion on the existing transmission system. For lack of a better way of saying it, there's too much traffic. You can't get cheaper power to where it needs to be, and that's reflected in bills today. And the next slide that I want to walk you through, and again, this actually has received probably more attention than the previous one. If you type in capacity auction, you'll see that those rates have skyrocketed. So to explain what the capacity auction is, and I'll explain why this is relevant to MPRP and what PJM is indicating in terms of projects needed. If you think about the way our system works, and if you think about your own electricity usage, it's not flat. It goes up and down throughout the day. Maybe you use more during the summer because you're turning your air conditioning units on. The reality is PJM needs to plan for enough generation. Well, they don't plan for generation, but they need to account for having enough generation available to meet that peak day, right? So they don't need to turn the lights off. Utilities don't need to turn the lights off. And so what PJM does is they run a market that basically pays generators to be available if called upon, not to run, but they run a market to pay generators to be available so that in the few times or maybe many times they're called to run, they're actually available to run. And so PJM ran this auction recently, and what they saw is these rates skyrocket, in some cases 600 to 800%. And these are historically high prices, and these ultimately end up in the bills that ratepayers will be paying. And you could, if I just want to highlight, right, you see BG&E, and specifically Dominion, which is Virginia, right, BG's Maryland, both are seeing historically high capacity auction prices. And so in terms of the actual projects itself, so I talked a little bit about how the grid works, talked about how demand is increasing, the supply to meet that demand is decreasing. So what PJM did is they ran a bid process. They said, hey, we have this issue in 2027 and 2028, and they opened up a bid window. Very much like you might have a contractor do work on your house. You receive multiple bids, multiple quotes. And what they did is they took in a lot of proposals. Even though this says 2022, the bid event, the bid was actually conducted in 2023 last year. And they effectively awarded a set of projects to fix the issues that they were seeing. And so what you see on the screen there is you see in light green, that's a BGE project. That was where really excellent. There's a couple companies there. You see in blue, that's First Energy, so some of that's Potomac Edison. There is a project in Carroll County. The pink line is the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project. And then you'll see a project coming in from the west in orange, that's NextEra. And then in yellow is Dominion. Next slide, please. And so just to give a little bit of a description of the project itself, I'll touch upon it briefly. This line connects from Dowd Substation in Frederick County and ultimately connects into Pennsylvania. And on the right-hand side is an example of the type of tower that we would propose, an H-frame.
We appreciate how you feel right now. He has a few more slides, and then we're going to get right to the Q&A.
Yeah, I'll finish. Okay. So let's get I only have a couple more slides, and I'll go through it. So in terms of the routing process, so what you've seen over the last year, we were awarded the project in December of 2023, and what you've seen over the last year is a couple of things. So first things first, we had to define what's called a study area. So the routing process that we have to go through ultimately has us looking at multiple routes. And so what we do is we come up with what's called a study area that shows an area with which we will study routes between point A and point B in Pennsylvania. What we do is we develop alternatives within those routes. We use public available data. We also use input from the public. And then what we do is we collect that feedback and we use a set of criteria to ultimately come up with a route. And so what you've seen us do today, and what we really did starting in October, is we started presenting what's called our proposed route on or about October 18th. And that leads us to where we are today.
Okay, thank you. The point of the slides are to give you the information so the same people don't have to ask the same questions. If you're ready to do a Q&A, we'll go ahead and do a Q&A, and then unfortunately, we'll come back to the slide if there's a specific question about it.
Huh?
We're going to do the Q&A.
Okay.
We'll decide on.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just received the list of folks. Okay, so, sir, you're fine to put the sign there. If you could just scooch over this way a little bit because the cameras can't see, and then we could see the speaker. Thank you so much. Okay, so just a reminder, I have the list of names here. I'm going to do my best to not butcher names. So I'm going to call up 5 folks at a time to come up to the microphone. It's really important that you speak into the microphone so everyone can hear the question. And again, it's going to be a 2-minute timer. The alarm will go off when the 2 minutes is up. And again, that's just to make sure as many of you can come up to this microphone as possible. Okay? So our first 5 folks, I have Brad Garst, Betsy McFadden, Susan Gordon, Joanne Frederick, and Brandon Hill. If you could come up to the microphone. Just a reminder to say your name so I can mark you off so I know we gave you an opportunity. Here's the microphone right here, and this gentleman will help you.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Betsy McFarland. I live in, thanks. I live in Adamstown in Frederick County. And as I said last night, I'm just going to say what I said again, that I've attended all of these meetings. I've spoken many times. I have submitted my comments to the PSC. I've submitted comments to these folks here at PSEG. And it has gotten me nowhere. So I'm not on a farm. I have 3 acres in Adamstown. My house is in the upper corner here, and as you can see, oh, I'm sorry, that they want to just plow right through the middle of my only 3-acre property and destroy it, including Bennett Creek. So I just want you all to know that PSEG really does not care what any of you have to say tonight. Obviously, they're a corporation. They stand to make a lot of money from this effort. And they proposed MPRP as the quickest and cheapest way to line their own pockets, not what is in the best interest of our communities or our state. Thank you. Hold on. I only have 2 minutes. So we need to stand together to really defeat this ill-conceived project and this impending devastation that will likely happen if they're allowed to proceed. So there are just 3 things I want to ask every one of you to do, and thank you all so much for being here tonight. First, do not negotiate with PSEG. They may send realtors out to you. They may send agents to you. They will send you letters. They will try to negotiate with you before the PSC process. Do not speak with them. Do not engage at all. Second, please contact the Maryland Public Service Commission if you have not already done so. Submit your comments. Tell them your concerns. They have heard a lot of outcry. They need to continue to hear it as we move into that process. And third, become a member of Stop MPRP, Inc. We are a very strong and growing force. We want all of you with us. And we do have experts and legal representation that will help us win this fight. So please help us together to kill this project. Thank you.
Ms. McFarland, thanks for being considerate of the time. I do want to remind everyone that if you didn't have a chance to enter your name for a question, you can still go over to the table near the lobby door and put your name down. Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Susan Gordon. I live in Frederick, Maryland. To PSEG, this is the ruin you will bring. Clear cut a forest, turn a cold water stream with native trout into warm water filled with sediment. Separate historic Black community from its cemetery. Run transmission lines behind the back bedrooms of an entire community, putting their young children at risk of leukemia and their older adults at risk for neurological disorders. Drop the values of homes by half. Make agribusinesses uninsurable. You will also destroy a Buddhist temple, but they can't speak up because they are pacifists. Minimal disruption? No. And here are your threats and lies. If the citizens of Maryland don't submit to MPRP, PJM will cause rolling blackouts, and the entire state of Maryland will turn against those opposing these destructive lies. These transmission lines are for green energy, clean energy. No, they are not. You have snookered the state into thinking so, but they are waking up to the costs involved. These are lines for data centers and AI, two beasts no one knows how to make safe. Half the scientists who created AI have stepped away from it because they see it as a possible threat to human existence. NPR did an entire article on the risks of data centers on October 22nd. There was an article in the New York Times yesterday describing what has happened to Memphis, Tennessee, now that data centers have come to town. Major disruptions in both power and water. Data centers and transmission lines march in and walk out with enormous profits and leave us, the citizens, dangling. Data centers should be providing their own energy and water, and they refuse to do that because they want us, the public, to provide for it.
Thank you, Mrs. Gordon. That's 2 minutes.
I have one more thing to say. If your concern, if your stated concern is providing sufficient energy for the growing demand, then you would work with us to find the best solutions. Your choice is to line your pockets.
Thank you, Mrs. Gordon.
Susan, this was you, right?
I'm just going to call up the next 5 folks. Elizabeth Bauer, Nikki Early, Terry Stair, Michelle Jefferson, and Ben Hosiel. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Joanne Frederick. I am president of the board of Stop MPRP, Inc. Two follow-up questions from last night. Jason, I think I heard you say that you've had conversations with BG&E. Is that correct?
We are coordinating with BG&E, just like we coordinate with other utilities on these projects, yes.
And that coordination is for what purpose?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
What's that coordination for?
Coordination is for a couple things. Number one, we wanted to understand more about their projects that they're proposing, but we are also interconnecting with one of their transmission right-of-ways that ultimately feeds the line into Pennsylvania.
Okay, so I did chat with them today, and they said that the only topic of your conversation was interconnection, and you have not yet engaged with them to ask about sharing their right-of-way.
So like I said, we've been coordinating with them, and we did talk to them about the Tri-County Reliability Project to understand that.
Okay. And Roger, we have not had the pleasure of meeting yet. I believe you said yesterday that farmers who lease the land from an owner would also be compensated. Is that correct?
Excuse me. Yeah, if they have a loss, they will be compensated, yes.
And so compensated directly from PSEG, not the landowner that would then be compensated. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that, please?
So if a piece of property is leased to a farmer, you will compensate the landowner for the disruption of that property. And I believe you said last night that you would also compensate the farmer who leases that property for the loss of revenue.
Correct, yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to confirm that PSEG would be paying that, it wouldn't be a pass-through from the landowner.
Anybody that suffers or that realizes a loss would be compensated directly, yes.
Okay. And have you reached out to those farmers who lease the properties?
I'm sorry?
Have you talked to the farmers who lease properties all across these 3 counties? Have they been notified?
No, we have not made any outreach to the farm, to any of the people along the route. The route has just been announced, and we have not made contact with any of the impacted property owners directly.
How do we plan to do that? How do you plan to connect with and notify the farmers who lease the land?
We have retained a land agent company contract land staff, and they in turn have hired some local land agents. We will be sending a letter, and we'll be reaching out to the property owners directly via letter to begin with.
Understand that, but then the leaseholders, how are you going to contact them? Because their information is not public.
The property owner, I'm assuming, would tell us that there is a lease on the property.
Okay, everybody hear that? Okay. All right, I know I'm over time. One last thing. No amount of information nor any amount of money will make this project acceptable. Thank you.
My name is Brad Garst, and I'm just here for a statement. My statement is there's one man that can make this go away, and that's the Governor Wes Moore. And his silence speaks volumes. Within days of him taking office, he replaced 3 of the 5 on the Public Service Commission. He put his cronies in so he could fast-track his green energy initiative. He closed coal plants in Maryland to import energy from West Virginia, from a coal plant. That's green. I mean, this project, 1,200 and some acres of farmland and trees, is this green? I mean, come on. Now, after you have replaced those people, we're raping the people of Carroll County to put electricity for data centers in Virginia. When my daughter lives in Culpeper, the energy from Dominion down there, her electric bill, she sent it to me last month, is 15% cheaper than ours now. Why are we providing electricity to Virginia? This is Virginia's problem, not our problem. Then you are raping 3 counties to provide tax revenue to the state of Virginia, because they'll get the tax revenue from the data centers. We don't. And you're going to lose tax revenue in Carroll County and the state of Maryland because of loss of farmland, loss of property values. Every person within eye view of these towers should contest their real estate taxes because your values go down. Now, you can draw your own conclusion about our governor, but my thing is, you know, the silence speaks volumes. I mean, is he being promised something? Is he getting something? I mean, he's not looking out for the people of this state, which after the election last week, he was on the interview saying, I'm going to take care of everybody. Well, he is not taking care of Carroll County. And there's a reason he's on TV every time you see him smiling like a Chessy cat. You think about that. And then the other point I want to make, post your properties. I mean, there's a sign the gentleman's holding for me that says, no trespassing, private property protected by the Second Amendment. And we do have the right to bear arms to protect our property. And if it comes to that, that's on Wes Moore. Thank you.
Hey, so we're going to try this again. I asked this yesterday with no response. Isn't it true that the entirety of the Window 3 upgrades are to power data centers?
As PJM
So
has
you're
indicated.
saying no. He says no. His answer was no.
No.
I want to
So
say that
you're
PJM
interrupting again.
I've been sitting in on the
Sir.
Transmission Expansion Advisory Commission meetings by PJM. okay? Sami Abdus-Salam, the head of transmission for PJM, has stated that data centers are the main driving factor of every Window 3 project, including MPRP. So now I have the question. If you're going to chase eminent domain, do you believe data centers hooking up to the grid is really something that's for the greater good of us?
That's not for us
Wait,
to answer.
Jim, let me just say, 7,500 megawatts, where PJM has said most of that is due to data centers. What I also want to say is that PJM has indicated that it's also due to just over 11,000 megawatts of generators coming offline. So there's two driving needs.
Yes, but there's more data centers coming online every day. PG County is courting data centers. Frederick County is courting data centers. The demand is going to go up, and the main driving factor is data centers. Why will you not acknowledge that?
Because it's also generator retirements per PJM. There's two, right? You need...
Jason is a liar, and I want you all to know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Michelle Jefferson. I have one question first. Who is it in Maryland that gave you the green light to do this project?
Thank you for the question. So PJM ultimately awards the project. They're regulated by FERC. They're regulated by the federal government.
Okay, but who in the state of Maryland gave you the... Somebody had to say yes. Who said yes?
So I'm not aware of the entire process that PJM goes through, but we have not filed for a single permit. So technically, Maryland has not... there's still a lot of opportunity for Maryland to opine.
Okay, because I can't stand your lies anymore, and I don't think anybody else in this room. I've been a building permit expediter for 36 years. I know how the permit process works. If you are unable to tell me who it is in this state that has allowed you to get to this point, then you leave me no other choice. Where's that camera? President Trump, we need your help. We can't do this by ourselves. We need your help, sir. They're too blessed cocky. They're too blessed sure that they're going to push this through. If anybody else had this many people from here and Frederick and Baltimore counties show up and say, oh, hell no, they might step back and say, gee, we might want to take a step back and rethink this, but they are not. They're cramming it down our throats while they're shoving it up our tailpipes, and the only person that can help us is you, President Trump. This doesn't come into my neighborhood, but it comes into my fellow Maryland, my fellow Carroll County and Baltimore and Frederick County, their homes, their farms, their families, their livelihoods, and we need your help to just say no. Please.
Thank you, Ms. Jefferson.
Good night. And please don't come back here. We don't want you here anymore. Go home.
Thank you, Michelle. And just more specifically, we have not filed one permit in the state of Maryland, and when we do, that will be at the Public Service Commission.
I'm going to call up the next few people. Glenn Van Meter, Chris Myers, Jackie Vaughn, Sandra Skibba, Julianne Martin.
Hi, my name is Nikki Early. You've seen a lot of passion from the residents in Maryland since the word of this project was first released. But here's what you need to know. This is an audience of people who are not just concerned with their own property. This is not an in my own backyard audience. This is an audience who wants to protect our nation and who want to be good stewards of its land. This is an audience who I'm sure have been for their entire lives people who are willing to sacrifice for the greater good. But this project is not for the greater good. You know and we know that this project is a Band-Aid on a gaping, gushing, hemorrhaging wound. The energy needs caused by data centers is too great and will either continue to grow, where we will have these towers everywhere we look, or technology will change and either the energy need won't be as great as it is, or there will be other energy alternatives. You know and we know this project will probably be obsolete in 5 to 10 years. So the sacrifices you're asking us to make are not for the greater good. They are for PSEG's good and no one else's long term. You know and we know that this is a win-win for PSEG. It's just a matter of how big your win will be, not if you will win or not.
Thank you, Ms. Early.
I'm Terry Stair. Our farm on Hugh Shop Road is right under the flight line of the Carroll County Airport, which is a landing zone for EMS. What does the FAA have to say about this?
Great question. So we are definitely aware of that airport. And so it is been one of our focus points. We have yet to file for FAA permits, but our assessment based on our experience, based on where the route will go, is the line could safely be there near the airport. And we have experience with lines being near airports as well on our own.
Okay, because this extension cord from Pennsylvania to Virginia is going right through our farm. In the history of the Carroll County Airport, many years ago, there were a couple of small plane crashes on our farm. So this is definitely a concern of ours. This line is going to go right through the woods directly behind our house. We have begun to convert our farm into a winery, which we plan to launch next spring. Now, there's going to be a lot of lost revenue because there's a lot of bottles of wine that are not going to be sold because this line is going to go right through a field where we plan to plant some future vines. Who's going to compensate us for the lost revenue while our electric bills are going up? Exactly.
The farming is compatible with the lines. You can grow your grapes.
No.
You can raise your crops.
No.
It have farming is compatible.
I'm sorry?
Farming is compatible with these power lines.
No, it is not. It is going right through woods where the men on our farm hunt. We have a 4th generation of children growing up on our farm, and this farm is a legacy to them. And you're destroying it. Our property value is going to go down. It's going to affect the winery probably before we even launch it next year. So,
Thank you, Ms. Stair.
I think I'm good. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Bauer, and I'm from Frederick County, and I have been to all but one of your meetings. And I have a very general question for you. During a lot of these meetings, you've been asked questions that you've been unable to answer, and I've heard you say you're taking note. What have you done with those notes, and have you answered those questions for everybody's information?
So if there are, we certainly have more people on the table here with me that could help me answer those questions if folks have them. If there's other questions that quite frankly we're not able to answer, we will certainly look forward to whether it's answering them in future sessions or once we start communicating one-on-one with the property owners as well. But there's more people on stage here with me to help me answer this question. So if there are questions that you have or anyone has, we're going to do our best to answer them.
So there's still a lot of outstanding questions that haven't been answered. So what's our course of action?
So to our understanding, every email at this point, maybe we got a ton last night after Baltimore, but every email we've received on the MPRP or PSEG/MPRP email address, we've answered, right? We have a team that answers those emails. We have an 800 number. There are business cards at the entry and in the back that have the 800 number. my side of the shop answers those emails. So as of Monday, we were entirely caught up. I don't know what happened last night. Been a little busy, but those are the two primary ways where we would communicate and you get an answer back. And if there's a specific question, I'd ask you to email attention Jim, and I promise you we'll get back to you.
How does the rest of the audience get the benefit of the answer?
So you can ask us now?
I mean, if we're asking a question, you're taking note, or if we write an email to you and you're going to respond to it, does everybody see the answer?
We have FAQs on the website, right? And, frequently asked questions, right? Those are the biggest questions. And, when we've done these in the different counties, notably in Frederick twice and in Baltimore once, right? They even came up with their own FAQs. And then we added some ours onto our website based on the elected officials saying, you guys got to answer this question, right? So the only thing I can say for the benefit of everyone would be FAQs on the website or ask us right now. That's why we're here tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Bauer.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to call up the next few names. Matt Guilfoyle, Tim Lewis, John Peabody, Whitney Miller, Wendy Rush.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Sandra Skiba. I live 10 minutes down the road off of Stone Chapel. Hello, neighbors, friends. If we could possibly wind the slides back to the retiring power plant, or the generators, please. So I looked up, there we, no, back.
It's gonna take a while, I'll get there.
That's fine, that's fine. So you said Maryland's retiring a lot of generators faster than we can create new power. I looked it up specifically. Coal generators, there were 9 energy-producing coal plants in Maryland, and 8 of them in a span of the last 6 years were retired. One was only 4 years old. Why are they being shut down if we are in such need of power, especially one so young?
So there's definitely a combination of factors. I'm on the transmission side, not the generation side of things. I couldn't tell you exactly why they retire. What I will tell you though is generators, generally speaking, in PJM, a lot of them are not regulated. And what that means is they're like private businesses. They could choose when to shut down on their own, and PJM does not have the ability to order generation to be built. What they do is they run a market.
But the governor of Maryland does.
I don't know enough about that. Jim.
So I want to read directly from PJM because it'll give you your answer and I won't be stepping out of line. Generators are retiring in Maryland due to a mixture of economic, which Jason was speaking to, and policy justifications, and without replacement generation in place. And so we have this FAQ also in the back, but
I
there's your
understand
answer.
that. It's going back to the green policy, exactly. If we're shutting down these plants that can clearly still work and putting money towards them to build one just to shut it down in 4 years, I mean, come on.
You're getting to the root of the issue, right? So BG&E customers are paying $800 million to do an RMR, reliability must run, to keep a old, out-of-date, uneconomic coal plant running because its reliability must run. It is a major issue.
What about one that's 4 years old?
Say, Warrior Run? So Warrior Run probably falls into the latter part of that justification from PJM.
Thank you.
That was built in 2000 and shut down recently.
Thank you, Ms. Skiba.
Good. My name's Chris Myers. I live on Mount Venice Road. Right in my front view out of my house is the existing line that runs through Maryland. Only 8 years after moving there, I developed thyroid cancer. The gentleman who bought the property across from me, who the lines actually crisscross his property, only there for 5 or 6 years, he developed a super rare, super aggressive form of leukemia. So is there any connection? I know they say there's no definitive on that, but I find it highly suspect myself. As far as Virginia's needs, pull it from Lake Anna. There's a nuclear plant right there. Get your own power. Destroy your own state. But my bigger question is actually for everybody here. I grew up in Carroll County. After this last election, I saw a superimposed map, and it follows what's happening here. It follows what Martin O'Malley put in place. The redistricting. Carroll County is like the last little pocket, so they have no problem destroying our lives to expand the DC market. I'm pretty sure everybody here, my mother didn't have an indoor bathroom until she was a teenager. She did her homework from an oil lamp. And I'm sure there's a lot of people here that have similar stories. So, we can do without the power. We know how to get by.
Thank you, Mr. Myers.
We'll get by with a candle. And we'll grow our own food, and we don't need it. We don't need a data center, none of that. Carroll County doesn't need it.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Glenn Van Meter. I have a small farm just south of New Windsor. America is known for having government by the consent of the people. I had to write my question down. From where do you think you derive the moral authority to prioritize the profits of out-of-state corporations over the property rights, livelihoods, and futures of the people of not only my community, my county, our neighboring counties, but most importantly, our children, like mine who are sitting back there?
So that's a good question. Simply put, Jason explained, right? So FERC regulates PJM. PJM's in charge of maintaining a reliable grid. Their idea was to put out the window 3 process. We bid, we won. We won the bid from the feds, and now we're coming to you to get more information, and eventually we'll put in an application to the Maryland Public Service Commission where they will say yes or no, because as you said, we have a federal system, top, you go local, and then you go for approval. I understand your frustration. Take your time.
Take your time, sir.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm sorry to bring a pop culture reference into this, but these mouths of Sauron will come up and stand in front of you and wave a paper saying that they have the right, given by somebody else, to take what's our community, our county. We must resist them by any means.
Thank you, Mr. Van Meter.
Okay, this is a very quick promo I'm going to do before I ask them a question.
Ma'am, can you just state your name very quickly? Your name? Jackie? Okay, thank you, Jackie.
Okay. Basically, I just wanted to point out that they're going to file an application, right, in a couple months, very soon. And then once they file the application, the Public Service Commission is going to issue a notice. And now, granted, this isn't legal advice. I'm just kind of giving you some factoids to work with. So the Public Service Commission is going to issue a notice, and in that notice, it's going to have a time frame for you to file a petition to intervene. Now, why is that important? Because the Maryland statute provides at 3106 that if a person timely files, the person may apply to intervene in a proceeding before the commission. The commission shall grant leave to intervene unless the commission concludes that the parties to the proceedings adequately represent the interests of the person seeking to intervene. That is, someone that has a right to already intervene can already represent your interests, or the issues that the person seeks to raise are irrelevant or immaterial. Now, the importance of this is the intervener has all the rights of a party to a proceeding. So an intervener would have all the rights as PSG has. And in a proceeding before the commission, an individual who is an intervener may represent himself or herself, which obviously sounds pretty overwhelming. But that's why I'm telling you now, so you can all think about that. Now, this is, you can then file with an attorney. If you have a unique interest, you can file without an attorney. You can file and then go get an attorney. But all this will happen very quickly, so I think it's important that you know ahead of time so you can all think about it and what you feel comfortable with and whether you think you do have a unique interest or whether you just want to go through the regular commenting. I think the PSC allows you to comment. So I'm
Ms.
just
Vaughn,
throwing
in
that
the
out
interest
there.
of time, did you have a question? I know you had said you had a question. Did you want a second to ask that?
It's a money question. If I can find my piece of paper here. Oops. I might have to skip it because I can't find my paper here. Oh, okay, okay. Basically, the way I understand you get paid is the MPRP is an investment for you, right? So you get a return on equity, which is a % of interest PSEG will earn on their investment in the project. And then there's a formula rate, and that's the method used to create a yearly transmission rate to pay for this project. So the question is, because we all want to know how much this is going to end up costing us, has PSEG filed a formula rate with FERC to start to collect your cost of this project from the ratepayers? And if not, when do you expect to file it? And then has PSG filed with FERC to determine the return on equity for this project? And if not, when do you expect to file it? Because you know we're all very anxious to know how much this will end up costing us. Thank you.
I understand. Thank you very much for the question. It's a great question. And I know, could you hear me? Okay. I know this has come up a lot. So to answer her question, she's absolutely right. The way that we earn on projects is through a FERC formula rate. We have not yet filed for that rate. We don't have a definitive timeline when we will. It will naturally be at some point before we plan to, or if we get to the point where we plan to energize the line, but we don't have a current timeline now, but we have not yet filed for that rate. Which again, FERC, right, they have a whole process. They have to determine whether our rates, what we're asking for, is just and reasonable. So there's a process that we go through there that they basically go through with us. Thank you very much for your question, though.
Thanks, Jason. Sir?
My name is Matt Guilfoyle. I live on John Owings Road. This power line is going to pass directly behind my house. It's going to impact Bear Branch negatively. Question I have, do you want us all to go away? The easiest thing to do is use the existing right-of-ways for the power lines. Is this insanity? The simplest thing is to use the existing right-of-ways, and you are not doing that. Is it a profit issue, or is it some other method? It defies any common sense solution to this.
So can we go to the slide that shows the window 3 projects? So when you look at the amount of projects that were awarded during window 3, they touch all of these existing right-of-ways in some way, shape, or form, for either being upgraded by BG&E, Exelon, Potomac, Edison, First Energy. So a lot of that work is already being done. We looked at paralleling that existing right-of-way as part of the process here, and that's where we came up with the option for Route H and where we are today.
So essentially, it's a profit issue. You don't want to pay to use the existing right-of-ways.
Sir, I would say that they're already utilized, and there's the opportunity for us to get in there is not available.
Well, we're talking about a power tower. Towers go vertically. You could add height to those to add more lines. I'm not an engineer, but it doesn't take an engineer to figure out that you can use the existing power lines. It is your choice not to, and to negatively impact our community. And that's why we're here, because there is no consideration for the community at large. Thank you.
No,
Thank you, Mr. Guilfoyle.
And thank you very much for your question. And unfortunately, so I was going to cover that as part of the presentation. I know we had cut it short, so I'm going to cover it a little bit now. So we have a lot of experience, myself, a lot of experience. This group on the table here have a lot of experience using existing rights-of-ways, all the way up to 500 kV, the voltage that we're talking about here. But if we want to talk specific to this project, I just want to explain based on our experience why using existing rights-of-ways for this project, for the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project, is not feasible. So if you take a look, the right-of-way that we are being asked to utilize most often is the one where that green line is. And you kind of see it goes a little bit south and makes a turn left. One of the issues is that BG is already putting a 500 kV line in that existing right-of-way as part of window 3. For rights-of-ways that aren't currently seeing an upgrading as part of window 3, part of the issue is you have to rebuild the existing line. You need to take outages on that existing line. Ultimately, ratepayers pay for that cost. So when you weigh the cost of that project, it would be magnitudes, or at least a magnitude more than the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project. And so that's one of the reasons why we do not believe it's feasible.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Ma'am.
My name is Whitney Miller, and I have a statement. First of all, thank you for not subjecting us to your entire propaganda PowerPoint for today. Guys, it's almost 2 minutes. Hold on. I've been coming to meetings since July. I have seen and heard Jason's avoidance, half-truths, and lies regarding this project. I have seen Jim's smug condescension, even telling us these were just lines on a paper. Now, here we are again to give our feedback now that a final proposed route has been announced, which I learned through secondhand means, despite how they told us they were going to tell us. So tell me, when do we get to be upset? Because I saw that last night's group was labeled as hostile, so we need to clarify. Your intention is to come into our state, destroy our land, render our homes unlivable, and affect our food security, water sources, and other protected and natural areas. You then want to scurry back where you came from, leaving us to not only deal with the carnage, but pay for it. We are not the hostile ones. You say you do not want to take anyone's homes, but you know as well as I do that you would not be willing to live as close to these lines as you are trying to force me and my family to live. This is less than 200 feet from my home and my 3 young children. These are no more lines on a paper than I am just a spot along your map. We are actual people. We are an actual community, and unfortunately for you, this community has learned that this project is a glorified extension cord to service data centers. This community has learned that the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project serves neither Maryland nor reliability. And this community will not allow you to destroy our land just because you are pretending to be kind and civil while you do so. Shame on you for being in the business of ruining lives, homes, and land, but you may not have any of ours. Do not visit my home. Do not visit my neighbors, because the answer is have the day you deserve.
Okay, I do have a large list of names, so if we would like to get through all of these names to be respectful of your time, ma'am, would you like to go ahead and go?
That's going to be really tough to follow. My name is Wendy Rook, and I do appreciate you all being here this evening. I cannot imagine how thankless your job has been during this whole process. My husband and I live less than 3 miles from here on 27 of the most beautiful acres I've ever seen. I have a couple questions. Given the fact that reconductoring of existing lines is indeed a possibility and would more than double the transmission capability of those existing lines, why was that not considered? Number two, given the fact that if property values are adversely affected, as they are projected to be, does anybody have any idea what the lost revenue to the counties and then subsequently to the state might be, and where does that money come from? I cannot imagine any county government anywhere thinking that this is going to be a good idea. My third question is, given the fact that the amount of energy required by data centers is already shrinking by about 60% in the last 8 to 10 months, help me understand why this project is not already obsolete. Thank you.
No. Thank you for the
question. I don't really want to look at that.
Well,
I got nothing
Sir,
to say to Jim.
we want to answer these questions. If you can be
Huh?
respectful to Ms. Roosh, because she had 3 questions, so we want to make sure that we take the opportunity to give her an answer. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'll answer.
I can have your name up on the list next.
I can't hear them. I'm kind of deaf. I'm 68 years old and I've had cancer. So I'm just going to say what I have to say. Okay?
Sir, in the order to be respectful to Ms.
I'm just
Rush.
going to say what I have to say. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm not a farmer myself, but my grandfather was a farmer. My father couldn't be a farmer because he went off to World War II and did his duty for his country. My son's a farmer now. He owns a farm in Baltimore County, and I live on that farm because farms are about family, right? That's why I'm here, to stand up for my land, my rights, and my community. And I'll tell you this, don't let these guys intimidate you. Don't sign anything, and don't give them an inch. They may say it's just a survey, but they could be drilling, disturbing your soil, or worse. Signing anything with these guys gives them more freedom on your land than you realize. If they show up, tell them to leave. If they refuse, call the police. Don't be intimidated, stand firm. And even if they get a permit, still don't let them on your property and let them get a court order first. They can't come on your property without a court order. Let them get a court order for every property. That's the way to break them. This is how we win. We make it unprofitable and unmanageable for them. This is our moment to stand together. Each of us has the right to protect our homes, our families, and our land. I've already been through radiation and chemo, and I'll survive these guys too. I've been stood up at the gates of hell once, and I didn't back down. And I won't back down to you mooks.
Being respectful to Ms. Roosh, we're going to get back to your question, ma'am.
Yeah,
We have those three
I just
questions.
would like to address the questions that were asked before by Wendy, I believe, right? Wendy, yep.
So reconductoring. So decent amount of my career has been spent doing reconductoring projects. We have a lot of experience working with all types of conductor, including the advanced conductors that people have asked about. In our experience, and our analysis has shown you cannot get the additional capacity of the existing 500 kV lines. You cannot get enough capacity to double that. Maybe you could do it at other voltage lines, maybe other types of lines, but you cannot get it out of this existing line out there. Secondly, even if you could, one of the concerns that we would have as being a transmission owner ourselves is now you're putting all your eggs in one basket on one transmission line. We are talking about the Route 95 of transmission lines. If you could, in theory, double the capacity of a 500 kV line, it would be like putting two Route 95s on top of each other. And so I just wanted to be able to address that, but we have a lot of experience as a company. Mike to my right over here has a ton of experience. If you wanted to add anything, Mike, to that.
So the other thing I would say is that this process that we went through with PJM and a window 3, the local utility companies, BG&E, First Energy, Exelon, had the opportunity to put in those proposals, and some of those were accepted, and some of that work is going on to try to solve the anomalies that came out of that window. So that work is actually happening, and it's being done by the local utility companies that are there. If you think about what the MPRP does, is it helps to make sure that the underlying transmission grid is not taking that additional load on without the generation available. So that's really what the project helps, is to offload the underlying grid in the state of Maryland and give you guys the additional capacity for a safe, reliable system.
Sir, I'm just going to take a minute to call up the next folks. Joanne Nichols, Paul Vince, Susan Gordon, Jennifer Small, and Jackie Vaughn. Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Peabody. Excuse me, I've reached the age where I need a little piece of paper to keep my memory on. Everybody who depends on electric power wants to have a grid system that is efficient, reliable, and resilient. Recently, we have learned that Maryland's grid system could and should be improved. However, the proposed project that you have presented us with does little or nothing to increase Maryland grid reliability and absolutely nothing to increase efficiency. Instead, I have a modest proposal. Instead of spending billions of dollars to bring power to potential data centers in Northern Virginia, I recommend that you work with these data centers. Instead of sending power to them, encourage them to come to where the power is. Maybe the data centers could be set up in Peach Bottom or Salem or in areas that could really seriously use some improvements in their systems, like in Chester, PA. It would be helpful in so many ways. The data centers could have efficiencies. They would get power less expensively then they'd have to pay for it for having it shipped 70 miles to them. And the land that would be available within a short distance around Peach Bottom or Salem is much less expensive than Northern Virginia. So I encourage people to think about this as a possibility because, among other things, instead of Maryland having to shell out millions and millions and billions of dollars to pay for something we don't want, maybe some of that money we would be willing to spend to improve our domestic power situation and the efficiency of our grid for now and for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peabody.
John, just want to quickly answer that. So number one, your main point that data centers should locate near the, right? So number one, the industry is doing that, right? We can all read the news stories. So the data center industries as a whole is doing that. But then also where they're located is a local planning and zoning issue, right? So that's number one. And then number two, where PJM gets their numbers from, and Mike said this earlier, but where PJM gets their numbers from, that the load is going up, they get it from the local utilities. So it's a bunch of different sides, but holistically, taking MPRP and all the $5 billion of Window 3 projects out of the industry of data centers, tech industry is looking at co-locating at generating facilities.
Ma'am, I'm going to call up the next few folks very quickly. I think it's Beth Pickett, Dave Sisler, Melvin Bailey, Dwight Bauer, and Daniel McCowan. Go ahead, ma'am.
My name is Jennifer Small. I live in Baltimore County. I have a small farm. I have a question. The background is Maryland Public Utility Code 7-208 B1, which provides B1 to obtain the certificate of public convenience and necessity required under Section 7207 of the site subtitle for construction under the section. A person must file an application with the Commission at least 2 years before the construction of the facility will commence. The Commission may waive the 2-year requirement on a showing of good cause. My question, PSEG projects that it will have this project completed by 2027. Does Maryland Public Utility Code apply to your project? And if so, do you intend to request the PSC to waive the 2-year requirement, and what is the basis for that waiver?
Thank you very much for the question. If I recall, I think this was the same question asked yesterday.
Which you didn't answer.
I did not. Thank you. There's a lot of very specific questions. It's hard for me to have the answers.
You never answer any of my questions.
So to answer your question, my understanding of that code, is that specific section you're referencing applies to power plants. However, there is a second part, if it did apply to transmission lines, that we would need a waiver. I will say this, and I will say this again. This is a very aggressive timeline. PJM has indicated when we need to get the project done. And so, yes, it is very, very aggressive. But ultimately, that'll all shake out in the process once we apply for permits.
Oh, and I do have another question. And what steps will you take if landowners deny you access to their land prior to this project receiving a certificate of public convenience and necessity from the Maryland Public Service Commission?
Good question. We will continue to try and convince the property owners that
I can't.
We will continue to work with property owners to get their agreement to let us on their property so that we...
Will you sue them? Are you going to sue them or shut them down? Eminent domain?
Eminent domain does not come into play until after the CPCN is issued, if at all.
Okay. And how many routes are you going to submit?
No.
Do you know how many routes you're going to submit?
Jason's having a microphone problem.
Okay.
Sorry about that. So ultimately, I don't know, I believe we submit all of the routes that we presented, including we intend to have a narrative on one route that we did not propose as feasible, and that's the parallel route, because it violated one of our key criteria, was making sure that if people, per the NESC, if they want to live in their homes, they could safely do so. But I don't know off the top of my head how many routes. I know we started with about 10 routes. We're now down a proposed route, but that routing alternatives analysis and all of that background will definitely be part of the filing. But ultimately, we're proposing a single route to the PSC.
Okay, and then I do have an answer for about the FOIA question about who was involved with all this, because one of our colleagues found out that not only Governor Les Moore was involved, but also our Maryland Department of Agriculture, Environment, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Small.
I think it's okay. Might be air hot. Hi, my name is Paul Wirtz. My wife and I have a farm on Rockland Road. And fortunately, your 140-foot tower is 200 feet from my front yard. So I'm a bit frustrated. Today, you talked about the urgency of the project and how PSG or PJM has to push this through because it's so important and so hot. If it's so important and so hot, why are we taking such a strong stance towards the green initiatives that are closing down coal-fired power plants when they're perfectly functional, to put through a line that I'm not going to gain any benefit from? How much of the power that's coming across my farm will provide for my family? How much are we going to get in Carroll County out of those lines? Zero.
Yes. Thank you for your question. And I
have a couple questions, so you might want to speed up.
Yeah. So ultimately, if we could go to the slide with many lines, ultimately, I don't have an answer for your specific case. What I will tell you is this line ultimately feeds into substations in Maryland, and what it effectively does is it offloads the underlying facilities that would become overloaded, which include lines that would feed your businesses and homes.
So the lines are going to come overloaded because we're going to take power sources offline that don't necessarily have to come offline right now, number one. Number two, who's paying for this? I think that we are. Aren't our electric rates going to go up to pay for this line?
So what you're seeing a lot in the news is actually the supply side, but what you are, and there's actually a couple parts to your bill. The two main parts is you pay for the power generation, the supply of energy. You also pay for the distribution of energy, so that's either on transmission or distribution lines. So to answer your question, at the 500 kV level, there is a formula that PJM uses that's approved by FERC that ultimately has the costs of this particular line and many other 500 kV lines actually being shared across all of PJM. So that's all or parts of 13 states plus the District of Columbia. All ratepayers will actually pay for a portion of this project and other projects as well.
Okay, so last thing, and it's kind of a statement. So we get to pay for it, we get zero from it, and I get all the impact. I don't think this is necessarily a great idea. So if anybody here has the same opinion, you might want to speak up to PJM, because there's no reason we should be taking the pain for this self-inflicted wound. Thanks.
No, thank you. And
sir.
thank you very much for your comment. I just wanted to add that this is the highway of electricity. I know this question has come up a lot. And it's very much like, how much do you benefit from Route 95? How much do you benefit from Route 70? It's a very difficult question to answer. But this is the underlying grid, the backbone of the grid, and this is an enhancement to that grid that ultimately we all rely on. And so the rate, the way that the costs are shared are actually across all customers in all of PJM. That's about 65 million people that PJM's area covers. So I just wanted to answer that. But thank you very much for that question.
Don't pay attention to the timer. I know it started already, but I'll pay attention. What's your name, sir?
Hello, my name is Danny McCown. I'm just an average Joe, but I wanted to show up and show my concern, and I'm really proud of all y'all here that showed up. You should give yourselves a hand. All right. One thing I haven't heard anybody talk about is some of the collateral damage. This is going to take some really heavy equipment to put these giant structures up. Do you know what this kind of equipment going down 2-lane roads, 1-lane roads, gravel roads does to our small back road system, beautiful roads in our area? Nobody's mentioned that.
A legitimate concern, right? So generally what we do on projects like this is we make sure that any collateral damage that happens to within the county, municipalities, that we would stand tall and fix that stuff.
Okay.
It's not the first time we've done this. We've fixed roads in the past.
Thank you, Ms. Rickowen.
Good. Good evening, Dwight Balker, Balker's Orchard in Westminster. We are, thanks everybody for coming out. We're a well-known name in this community, been here for 120 years on the soil. This thing is slated to go past my front door and impact numerous farms, to which property values in the millions you attempt to flush down the toilet. Questions are pointless. I just want our Governor Westmore political hierarchy, the local community has made a big stink and done a wonderful job to try to slow this thing down or get it stopped. My plea is with the political hierarchy of whoever views this, hears this, reporters, whatever, is to spit out the libtard Biden Kool-Aid. I have not had a roving blackout at my house yet. I have a large solar array, and that's economical because of the subsidies, but I like my water to run at night. I like my lights to work at night too, but the green energy Bidenomics package is a little foolish. Fossil fuels power the world. I think the numbers for this thing are inflated and false because of COVID and all the teleworking and the data surge that hit after COVID. I don't believe these numbers. I haven't had my lights turned off in 30 years other than a blizzard. It's just ridiculous. You know, if our armed forces can put a little reactor on a destroyer or an aircraft carrier and ride in it, sleep next to it, and power it for the 50-year service of that vessel, I'm pretty damn sure we can put those at the data centers and not impact multiple farms. We have an agri-tainment operation where people come out to see where their food come from and see what country, as 1% of us hillbillies still do this, see where their food comes from. And boy, this thing is gonna change we'll hear it hum where a lot of my strawberry fields are. I don't want, my kids are teenagers now. They are saying they want to continue in our heritage of farming. I don't want my grandkids living under this. Farmers don't move homes. We just generate around to the same homes for hundreds of years. I don't want my grandkids growing up under this thing off my front porch where I live now. And I don't agree with the out-of-state for-profit to run a 200-foot whatever it is through my farm and compensate me for that sliver when you knock the value of multiple farms by millions of dollars. I just can't buy that. I need our political powers that be to Public Service Commission, please spit the Kool-Aid out and kill this thing in its tracks, please.
Thank you, sir. I just want to call out the next few names: Albert Holt, Karen Donaldson, Vanessa Vleck, Aaron Goldsmith, and Ivy Miley.
I'm Melvin Bale Jr., and I have a couple of questions. Will you pledge to not utilize quick take eminent domain in the process of getting easements?
We do not have quick take eminent domain ability even if we get a CPCN.
I'm talking if you would get that.
We do not have quick take abilities.
Even after the Public Service Commission?
That is correct.
Guys, that means just say no. Number two, why would you have routes that are going through known sinkhole areas, and how far away from known repaired sinkholes will you keep your towers?
So that's a very specific engineering question. We have myself.
No, wait, let me interrupt. That's not an engineering, that's a personal question.
It's, I'm sorry, what I meant by that, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be impersonal about it. Our engineers, we have a lot of experience dealing with transmission towers in all sorts of geological formations, whether it's karst formations, which I think is maybe part of what you're referring to. And as part of the process of going through the design, we will need to conduct geotechnical borings to identify exactly the extent of what's below the ground. But we have experience working close to them, but that will be determined through the design process. Something to keep in mind, the towers, on average, the design isn't naturally nowhere near being finalized. They're between 800 and 1,200 feet apart, so there's some flexibility to move those towers if we should reach something.
There are 3 towers in my area that are within 50 feet of known repaired sinkholes. I don't see how you're going to get around that. Number 2, since you took so long to answer the question, how are you going to get the properties that are in either malfeasements, rural legacy easements, or federal easements out of their contracts? And whose responsibility is that? And also, if you go across timber land, will you pledge tonight to forestry bank all trees that will be destroyed forever where your line goes?
As to the easements, the malfeasements themselves have a carve-out they allow for utility right-of-way. So that was part of the setup for the malf.
But that is specific in the language there. It says for the benefit of Marylanders. So explain to me how getting electric from northern Baltimore County to Virginia is going to help Marylanders.
That's a determination by the Public Service Commission. But okay. MALF has, there is a specific carve-out. The other easements, we've tried to do the best we can. We work around them. If we can't work around them, then we will have to negotiate and work with the property owners as well as the agencies that hold those easements and come up with the best resolution we can.
And then what about the trees that will be destroyed forever in that 150-foot swath?
Yes, thank you. So as part of the environmental permitting process, there is what you're referring to, that's referred to as mitigation, that's the term. We will absolutely comply with any requirements that are out there for it.
So will you comply with state law that says that you do not have to replace any of those trees? Or will you willingly, in your application to the Public Service Commission, say that you will have a forest bank that you will replace those trees?
Yeah, and I don't know your specific situation. I know there's regulations, there's different types of forests and everything like that. I would be surprised if there wasn't a requirement to have some sort of mitigation for forestry loss.
So will you pledge tonight to replace all the trees that will be destroyed forever in the path of your line?
Like I said, I would imagine that's part of the mitigation that would be part of the project.
We pledge to work with the PSC, who will then work with Carroll County to identify which trees, and that is part of the CPCN process. So you get the application in, you work with the state, who then works with the county, and who works with you, who then we can make a plan to say which trees should be replaced.
So if you're going through old growth forest,
yeah, exactly, because there's a difference.
Who gets the money for the trees that will be removed in that area?
So let me ask a clarifying question. So you're saying if the trees are taken down, who gets the trees? That would be the property owner.
At whose cost?
So we would remove the trees and leave them for the property owner.
You'll remove the trees and then you'll pay so much per board foot or per tree?
So I'm not understanding what your question is.
In other words, you're not going to replace the trees. The landowner is going to be compensated. Who gets the sale of the timber?
That would be the landowner. The property owner gets to keep the trees.
And that's your pledge this evening?
That's what we do all the time, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
Hi, my name is David Sisler. Been here in Carroll County since December '61. I've seen on the road in Garrett County with all the windmills up there. Believe me, I'm on your side, all of you. But let these people talk. Let's get some answers instead of shouting match back and forth. Let's not be hostile like they were in Harford County last night, or Baltimore County, whatever it was. Let me ask you a question. The Dickerson Power Plant in Frederick County, is that going to be shut down?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
The Dickerson Power Plant in Frederick County on Potomac River, I believe it is. Will that be shut down?
Dickerson, you're referring to Dickerson?
Pardon?
You're referring to Dickerson? There is a former...
Dickerson has a power...
Yeah, so I forget what year Dickerson shut down. Actually, we have it somewhere, but Dickerson was operating there. I think it still has a small unit operating as well.
Will it be shut down, yes or no?
No, Dickerson is shut down.
It is shut down
It's
now?
shut down in like 2020.
Let me ask you, that's a coal-fired plant, I believe, isn't it?
Yes, it was.
Could that be upgraded to supply the power that you're coming from? Is it coming from Susquehanna or is it coming from Peach Bottom? Your power.
So yeah, bring up the map, because I know, again, this question gets asked a lot.
Hard question.
It's the, go to the slide with the, sorry to bear with me here. And I know the clock is ticking down, so we'll give you extra time, but pictures sometimes help explain the answer. To answer your question, one of the connection points is near Peach Bottom, but very much like if you have multiple streams flowing into a river, it's very difficult sometimes to tell which stream and what water molecule comes off that.
Excuse me, sir. Is it coming from
all I'm saying is that you can't determine exactly where the power is coming from. What you can determine, PJM can determine, is what plants were running PJM-wide when your electricity was being used. Right. Go ahead, sir.
You can't tell me where the power is coming from, but you know where you want it to end. But you can't tell me where it's beginning at.
It connects into the regional system. Pennsylvania has nuclear. It has other sources of energy as well, but ultimately it doesn't directly connect. In other words, it's not like it's directly connecting into the turbine of a nuclear plant. It connects into a substation that's part of a wider grid. Yes, the endpoint happens to be near a nuclear plant.
Okay, let me ask you another question.
Sir, being very respectful, I have a lot of names, and I'm trying to ask everyone to keep it to 2 questions.
One last question, and I'll be out of here. If this is going through your farm, your backyard, would you be protesting against it too? Would you stand up and fight against it? That's all.
Thank you, sir. So again, just as a reminder to try and get through this list of names, I'm going to ask everyone to stay to that 2 minutes. I'm trying to let people finish, and I'm really sorry if I have to cut you off. We do need to finish this at 8:30, so I know we only have 45 minutes left. Thank you so much.
I'm Vanessa Black.
Vanessa and
I made him come.
Vanessa and Frank Vleck. Boy, that's a beautiful picture you have up there on your poster. If this proposed power line goes through, that will be ruined, as well as the mental and physical health and the livelihoods of all these great people behind me, all these hardworking farmers who all they want to do is work the land and make an honest living. That will be gone.
Sir, I'm not going to tell any of you guys.
Well, can you talk into the microphone?
I'm not trying to tell anybody how to present, but if you could please not be on your cell phone while we're talking to you, that'd be great.
Also, your first slide you put up tonight showed the beginning of the electrical transmission process. The beginning of it was a coal-fired plant, and the end of it was a household. The end result of this is going to data centers, not to my house or not to anybody else's house out there in Carroll County. And frankly, the coal-fired plants on your other chart, all of those are being closed either by the federal or the state government in this Green New Deal power grab. I'm going to add one other thing. There is a new sheriff now in town in Washington, D.C., and that in all likelihood is going to change. So maybe you better think about that before this proceeds any further. Going back to what happened last night, Senator West made some very good points. I believe he spoke of a 4 or 5 tiered legislation process he's trying to bring up in the state of Maryland. I think this needs to be looked at a lot more closely, just like Senator West had suggested. My question to you guys is, what's the big rush? Why are we pushing this through so quickly? You don't even have a question as to what's going to happen with all the acres of trees that are being cut down. If you can't answer that, I don't know how you're going to safely put these things up in 3 years. What's the rush? That's my question.
And I'd like to know why you guys didn't go to that press conference that they were all at. The guy, I don't know if you guys had an opportunity, it was live streamed. Senator West. I think Frederick and Carroll County, Baltimore County.
Ms. Fleck, we want to make sure that we answer your question.
Sure, I do, but I want to also encourage people to listen to it because he had a plan.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. What's the rush?
What's the rush?
So PJM ultimately said that there's major issues on the grid starting, they really say June 1st, 2027. And so we have an obligation. We are a utility ourselves. We serve over 2 million customers. We have an obligation to meet that. And so PJM ultimately determined when the project is needed. And so backing off of that, it is a very aggressive schedule. I do acknowledge that. But they ultimately
that's kind of scary
determined
because then that leads to mistakes. Just like the final route wasn't even one of your suggested routes. So making things be so aggressively fast leads to mistakes. We want time.
Thank you, Mrs. Black. Mr. Black.
I'm Karen Donaldson. I wish I had my distance glasses on so I could call out the first gentleman's name there. I just know, you're the real estate dude, right?
That's Roger.
Okay, Robert?
Roger.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, you had made a statement earlier that we can farm under the towers. My question to you is, hopefully you have children and grandchildren. Would you let your grandchildren eat food that was grown under those towers?
Yes, they do today. There's farms, farming is underneath power lines all over this country, all over the world. My children, my grandchildren eat that food, I eat that food.
That's ridiculous. Okay, my grandchildren wouldn't eat. I wouldn't let my dogs eat it. Okay, but maybe we think, you don't live in Carroll County?
I do not.
Okay, maybe we just think a little different than you do.
I grew up in Wisconsin in farm country, and there's plenty of power lines over all the food that I ate when I was growing up.
Gotcha.
Ms. Donaldson, you have a minute. Did you have another question?
I had one more question.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify. A few minutes ago, a gentleman spoke, and I thought, but here back there I couldn't hear clearly, that you do not think that you guys can use eminent domain to take our properties, correct? Did I hear that correctly?
No, what you heard was that if we get a CPCN, the question was, do we have quick take eminent domain? The answer is no. Quick take eminent domain is not available. Eminent domain, which doesn't grant us immediate possession of the land, is something that if we're a utility in Maryland, just like any other utility, it's a tool that's available to us.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just going to call up the next few names. Skylar Miley, Dale Feaser, Robert Hugh, Leslie Bachman, and Matt Moran. Go ahead, sir.
All right, my name is Aaron Goldsmith. I am speaking today to reiterate PMJ and PSEG have already greenlit this project. They are not here today to assist us or listen to us, but to inform us because they have to, not because they want to. We, the affected people, are nothing but a minor hurdle for them to deal with in their eyes. This was chosen because it was the most cost-effective bid, the cheapest. And it goes to our community and farms because they believe that we are the easiest to roll over. Your impassioned pleas and stories should not be directed towards them. When you talk about your family farm, turn to the crowd to speak. We are the ones that need to listen and act. These people in front of us have sold their soul and empathy to PSEG. As individuals, we are weak to them. PSEG is not here to lose money. Any reimbursement they shell out will end in a net loss for us, the affected. We need to be united to create a wall against this project, not individual speed bumps to be mowed over. Make sure you join the organized fight against them. MPRP is not the only solution and not the right solution for us. We are more powerful together. Join StopMPRP.com. Let your elected officials know that this issue will affect their future terms. Speak out in your community and the media. Shine a light on this. The majority of Marylanders don't know this exists.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Goldsmith. Would you be Ivy and Skylar?
Yes.
Okay.
Me and my sister know that the power lines make cancer. Yeah. So can you please not kill us with cancer? Yeah. If our chickens live right next to the power lines, would they be affected?
Kyle or Bill?
We have someone come up and answer your question, okay, girls?
Yeah. No, thank you very much for the question, though.
That's a really good question, girls. Thanks so much for asking. Bill, the question was, will power lines affect the, girls, was it the chickens?
Yes.
Okay. The question was, power lines affect their
In a steel barn.
In a steel barn?
Yes.
Thank you for the description.
Since a lot of transmission lines do pass through rural and farming territories, there's lots of research that has been done looking at to see if the fields from power lines affect livestock and other animals, including turkeys, chickens, cows, and so on. Those studies involving transmission lines between 400 to 500 kV or even higher at 765 kV have not shown there's a relationship between the presence of the transmission line and effects on the livestock, including birds.
Girls, did you have something else?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
If we can't exercise outside, then how are we supposed to exercise? If we can't exercise outside, then how will we exercise? Because it's only 50 yards away.
No, and thank you very much for the question. So this question has been, or forms of it have been asked at previous meetings, and so the folks to my left over here, they're experts in the fields of the types of questions you're asking for, and that could safely be done. There's many rules or codes that we need to follow that make sure that you could do that safely.
Girls, thank you so much for your questions,
Thank you.
and you should be really proud of yourself for being brave to come up here. Did you have one more?
We have one more.
Okay, go ahead. How do I say no to that? What do you think, girls?
How are we supposed to take care of our chickens? No, we didn't say that yet.
Thank you, girls.
My name actually hasn't been called yet, but I need to talk to you. This is a very serious thing, but I would like everyone to listen very carefully. I have a story to tell. It'll probably take longer than 2 minutes. You are now moving the power lines a quarter mile down the street and sending it across my property. You put a pin out, put 7895 Talbot Run Road, Frederick County, says no, period. Do not cross our property lines, do not enter, do not ask. We will fight you 100%. We will call the cops. So, you guys are saying these 500,000 kilowatt lines are safe to be running across our properties, around our animals. I have 2 creeks that are on my property that converge. I have Talbot Branch, which has been under studies for 5 years to become a trout stream again. And it's almost completed, but your power lines will destroy that. So that's a destruction of our ecosystem back there. When you come up over top the hill on my property, you're gonna have to put these poles at the bottom because our hill is about 250 feet straight up across my property, drop it down another 250 feet across another creek in order to continue on your route. Now the story I have to tell you is about my brother. My brother, 32 years ago, was working on a job off the 495 bridges. He was a construction worker. He was near a 6700 transmission line working, which Pepco deemed safe for them to work. As my brother was working, it was 3 days past his 25th birthday. It was the day before his vacation. He reached in to grab the bucket of the crane that he was pouring concrete from, and he felt a tingle. Those 6700 volt lines had a power surge. And do you know what happened? It arced out of that line, and it hit my brother with over 50,000 volts of electricity. He was thrown from the ground to the ground 30 feet below. My brother survived that only because he was in such great shape. The doctors were amazed. He is in medical books now because of his survival. My brother now stands with us at that farm, a double amputee, a paralyzed leg from the knee down on the left side. He has scars throughout his body from the burning of the electrical current going through his body. And now you think it's okay to send a 500,000 volt line across our driveway and block this man in for the rest of his life. This is his home. This is his peace and his tranquility. And you seek to destroy it. When I had to tell my brother that you move those lines a quarter mile down the road and come across our property, over our driveway, the only way in and out, my brother, who's a very strong man, cried. Because he's like, how am I going to leave my property ever again? I will be a prisoner behind your 500,000 kilowatt lines. And to me, that is unfair. No amount of money, no amount I'm asking, no amount of anything you have to offer is ever going to give you permission to come across our property. We will fight you in court, out of court, on our property. There are signs everywhere to not trespass, and that includes when you start sending out to real estate people. There is gates on my property. You don't come in my driveway. So I'm telling you right now, for the sake of my brother, who has already suffered enough through the power companies, I will protect him at all costs. All costs. There is nothing you can do that will ever change that, and I will refuse to give you any rights to my property. That property was bought over 34 years ago by me and my brothers. There's 5 of us for 5 signatures. They're all no's. We agreed with our father when he gave us this property that we will never sell it, never mortgage it, never get rid of it. It is our place, our sanctuary for us, our children, our grandchildren, and our grandchildren's children. So just know, you will never, even with eminent domain, I want you to understand that, you can push it, but you're not gonna get it. Even with eminent domain, you will not receive the property at 7895 Talbot Run Road in Frederick County.
Thank you for the opportunity for us to speak tonight. I sincerely hope that what you hear makes some difference here tonight.
Sir, may I have your name quickly?
My name is John Bissett, Executive Director of River Valley Ranch. A year-round youth camp, retreat center, and outdoor education facility in Carroll County. Since 1952, RVR has welcomed over 700,000 guests, providing a sanctuary where children and families reconnect with God and experience the beauty of His creation in ways many never have before. Each year, more than 8,000 guests visit RVR to immerse themselves in the natural environment we worked tirelessly to preserve. Many come from urban areas where such beauty is scarce, and for many children, RVR is where they experience their first hike through the woods or see the stars in a truly dark sky. The proposed power line threatens to destroy this unique experience by requiring the removal of countless trees and introducing large, unsightly structures that would fundamentally alter the landscape, stripping away what makes our camp so impactful. As a faith-based camp, we believe God has given us this land to do His work, and this project would directly restrict our ability to fulfill that calling. The lines come with a few hundred feet of several of our staff homes and our children's camps and dormitory areas. They also cut through the most usable parts of our property, where we have plans from our site development firm for expanding our camp ministry to serve more guests in the future. We understand the need for energy infrastructure, but we strongly urge PSEG to eliminate, reroute, or use existing right-of-ways for this project. While I understand PSEG may not own these right-of-way, you also do not own our land, yet you are targeting us. If PSEG is willing to request eminent domain for our property, why can't it do the same for those existing routes? How does another corporation have more rights over its land than private citizens and organizations like us? The adverse effects of this route on RVR cannot be overstated. We urge you to prioritize preserving community and natural spaces like RVR and those represented here, rather than pursuing short-term solutions that risk lasting destruction. Thank you for considering valuing people and community over profits.
Thank you, sir.
I have a few simple questions. How many towers are going to be constructed in Carroll County?
So the project overall is just just under 300 structures. I want to say Carroll County's probably a third or more of that.
So about 100, is that what you're saying?
It's not all finalized, but I'd say that's probably a pretty good number to use.
Have you determined where all the locations are?
We have preliminary locations. However, what we would like to do is work with the property owners to come up with the locations that are hopefully least impactful to you, as we do have flexibility based on our design.
How many cubic feet of dirt do you usually remove when you build the feet for the tower?
Great question. So the towers themselves, just to put in perspective, because of the voltage that we're at, they're spaced about 800 to 1,200 feet apart on average. And each tower has 2 foundations. And those foundations are generally spaced about 40 feet apart. And I'll get to your question because it helps to give the visual. Each foundation, we haven't determined we have estimated depths, but on average, I would expect that the foundations, each one is about probably 6 to 10 feet in diameter and probably about maybe 20, 30 feet deep. I don't know, Mike, if you wanted to add anything, but we have not determined that because we have not been able to conduct what's called geotechnical investigations, where we actually determine the actual soil that's at the ground.
Now, when is the estimated completion date for doing all of this?
Per PJM, we need to have the line in service by June 1st, 2027.
Wait a minute. So you're going to do all this by 2027 and you haven't done hardly anything yet?
That is what we will be looking to do in the new year if property owners, working with property owners to do it. But it is physically possible to do that.
All right. Also, now, in order to maintain the tower, will you have to build a permanent road to the tower?
No, not necessarily. We utilize off-road equipment, and we have what we typically do and what we would plan to do is work with the property owner. Maybe there's existing accesses that we could improve that the property owner usually uses, but we don't tend to leave roads into each of these towers, as due to the equipment that we have other ways to access it in an emergency.
There's a stream that right at Chalk Road number 1, there's a stream. There are native brook trout that are threatened and bog turtles. When you do the construction, the runoff will cloud the water and endanger those species.
So to answer your question on that, we have a lot of experience using what you are referring to is the control of that soil, right, as we dig something up. And there are what's called soil erosion sediment control items that we can install. Silt fence, silt sock, to limit or even eliminate that risk. But that is something that will be part of our detailed plans.
Sir, these are great questions. Just to be respectful to the folks behind you and on the list, thank you so much. Thank you.
My name's Dale Feeser. I'm an aviator And my concerns kind of lean towards the airport. The routing of this power line is fairly close proximity to the airport. So that got my interest up. And I went to the airport manager, who is Mark Myers, and the operations manager, John Ryan, and talked about this situation. And they feel that there's great safety concerns about this power line, especially the runway runs, it's, the heading is 16 and 34. As you approach from the north to land to the south, it takes you right over the area where these power lines will be. As an aviator, safety is at the top of the list. And anybody that gets on an airplane, they want to be safe. I don't care if it's a small airplane or a large airplane, that's the concern. These people who run the airport are very knowledgeable, think that this is an imminent danger. Also, I talked to Delta Airport consultants who oversee the operation of the airport, the development of it, and the safety of it. And they have the same opinion, the same concerns and worries. Now, I don't know whether this has been addressed by you guys. You said you have people in the FAA that you deal with and so forth, but that will not change the fact that people that are right there on the ground at the Carroll County Airport feel that this is a safety concern, and you can't take that away. The other thing is, the airport is under construction for a improvement, expansion of the taxiway and a new runway, and millions of dollars have to come from the FAA to the county to do this project. I don't think the FAA is going to want to funnel a lot of money into an airport that has safety concerns with a power line. The last thing I have to say is I have a friend who had a farm, not in this area, but he had a large farm. A power line went through it, and it wasn't just the fact that the power line went through it, but in constructing it, it just tore the heck out of everything. So I'm just saying that the airport's a concern, and it's not going to be easy to put a power line in without just disturbing and destroying a lot of land. Amen.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, and thank you for the concern. As I mentioned before, so we have a lot of experience constructing, maintaining transmission lines near airports. There are FAA regulations that govern. We have a lot of experience with that. We are aware of the airport expansion plans. As far as the second concern, we've done a lot of transmission work over the last 20 years. We've owned and operated transmission lines as a company for well over 100 years. And all I could say is that we bring practices to make sure that we minimize impacts to the extent possible, whether that's timber mats, whether that's time of year restrictions, whether that's use of silt sock or silt fence to limit erosion. We have experience with all that and look forward to utilizing them on this project. But thank you very much.
And sir, you mentioned quickly safety. Safety is also our #1 concern. So we would work with the local governments and the federal government to ensure that that area is safe. Thank you.
Mr. Moran, we're excited you're up here. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to make sure that I can call additional people up, so if you can just be mindful of the 2 minutes. Thank you, sir. You have at it. Go ahead.
Oh, I thought you were going to go.
No. I'm just letting us know that we're nearing the end, so I wanted to keep us all in check.
Hi, I'm Matt Moran. I'm from Adamstown, Maryland, which is in Frederick County. The audio in this room sucks. So, yesterday I was talking about false narratives, lies, and deception. The false narratives, okay? Remember back in July, Linganore High School, you said that the data centers were the main drive of this whole thing. It sounds like your narrative has changed since then. Now you're starting to say that we need this to power our homes. Back then, you were saying that only a very small portion of it might actually trickle out into the grid and make it into our homes, maybe down in southern Frederick County. Most of this is going to Virginia. That is the fact. And that's what you said in the beginning, and you're changing that narrative now. Okay, and then here's the other thing. Yesterday, the question that you didn't answer was about the map. Okay, what I've done here is I've created two maps. One of them is PSEG's map, which is the one that you all have available to you. You can see on your computer. It shows the green line of death. And then the other map that I have here is a recent map from just a couple of years ago. The map that PSEG is using is 6 years old. 6 years old. 6 years old. After COVID, there was a huge housing boom in rural areas throughout our country. They chose deliberately to use a map that was pre-COVID and doesn't show those homes. It doesn't show the homes, and then not only that, but they used a map that was, the photograph was taken in the summertime. So there's trees obscuring all the houses in the forests. Lo and behold, when you look at the second map, sure enough, there's all these houses out there in the forest that you couldn't see in their map. So my question to you is, and you've had 24 hours to think about this, so I expect an answer this time. My question to you is, explain why you're using this 6-year-old map. Please take this so that you can look at it. I've also given this to the PSC. I've also given it to the Fox channel that was here this evening. The Carroll County Gazette or Carroll County Times has this. Okay, I think the world should see this. Look at it. Don't fold it up, look at it. All right, you know the deception because you're smug and you just think you're all fucking, you're just so cool.
Mr. Moran, in the time, did you ask
cool.
your question? Jason,
anyway,
did you want to
question.
answer?
Why are you using a 6-year-old map?
I'm going to address both because I did talk to our folks about that. But let me address the first question first. That's 7,500. The narrative, I don't know where that's coming from, but the narrative has not changed. 7,500 megawatts that PJM has said, it's mostly due to data centers, but there's also generators retiring. But what I also said, and I don't know why this is missed, is that this line does not directly feed into a data center. It feeds into Dowb's substation, which feeds into the wider grid that we all ultimately rely on. We all rely on. That's all I'm saying. Second point, on the satellite imagery. What's been told to me, so the user interface, basically the website that you go to, in order to create a better, I should say, a quicker experience, so the map will actually load quicker, there are various years of images that are used per Esri. Esri is actually a worldwide known GIS developer, but the maps that were used to do the routing and the data that we have, I could assure, are the most up-to-date maps. We also obtain imagery with the leaves down to help in our routing analysis, and that's all taken into account. But the
Mr. Moran, I'm going to have to ask that you calm down, please. We want to hear your concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I'm not going to call any other folks up, but we want to get to everyone in the line. If you could announce your name, please.
Leslie Bachman.
Thank you.
I have a question about the financing of the transmission lines. I have a total of 5 questions. What percentage is paid by federal government, including any tax credits, state government, including any tax credits, utility companies, private investment, and tariffs to be collected by the local utilities? Question number 2, what percentage of the transmitted electric directly benefits Maryland residents? Number 3, what percentage benefits businesses whose corporations are legal Maryland companies, where they're headquartered here? Question number 4, what is the threshold that the law requires as defined for eminent domain to justify public benefit? 5th question, if you all are unsuccessful in getting the project through in Maryland, who will reimburse you, and what is the amount you will be reimbursed? I realize you probably don't have these questions today for me, so I will be at Brunswick tomorrow, and I can expect your answers then. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bachman.
So I just want to make sure we got all the questions. The first one on tax credits. I am not aware of any tax credits that we're seeking for the project. Certainly, this is part of a larger company, but what I will say is that I'm not aware of any tax credits or subsidies or anything for this project. The next one was on who benefits. So PJM has determined that everyone in PJM, that's all 65 million people that's covered, all the parts of 13 states benefits because they all pay for that. In terms of the reimbursement, I believe you're asking about if the project if we were not successful. Obviously, I hope we're successful, but if we were not successful, and hopefully the unlikely event that the project is not able to be completed, honestly, I'm going to tell you why I can't answer that, because that's a FERC proceeding to determine whether we spent money prudently or not, whether we deserve to get reimbursed for expenses or not. So I can't tell you how much we'd get reimbursed for, because we'd basically be asking. That is, it's likely to be a highly contested process. I'm not aware of that many cases where it's done, but I will tell you that utilities don't always get everything they spent in those cases. And then I think there was one more on eminent domain. I wasn't sure. Could you repeat that question, actually?
What?
Or I'm sorry, or Roger, if you
The threshold for eminent domain?
Yes.
Okay, if the project is approved by the Public Service Commission, that would grant or come with the grant of eminent domain. So it's up to the Public Service Commission.
So it would be up to the PSC to determine the percentage of benefit to Maryland residents to take our land. Is that correct?
No, it's the PSC has to make the determination if the project is going to go forward.
So if we benefit 1%, you could take our land as opposed to 50%.
That's up to the PSC.
Okay, we'll take it to the PSC.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Bachman.
And then your last question on companies located out of state. Just a reminder, BG&E is headquartered in Chicago, and Potomac Edison is headquartered in Cleveland.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Karen Joachim. I spoke last night. We've heard tonight, I don't need to repeat a lot of what others have said, but MPRP is a 4-letter word, and this has been deceitful from the very beginning. It's not for Maryland reliability, it's for data centers in Virginia. In July, I was at a meeting at Hereford High School, and Joanna Frederick asked you had on your timeline that Maryland leaders met with PSEG in December 2023. It was on their timeline. Joanne Frederick asked you who you met with, and you refused to tell her. Now, here's something I learned since then, and everybody in the room can go home and Google it. Fox 45 came out that PSEG gave $10,000 to Westmore to go to the DNC. They gave Westmore $10,000 to go to the DNC after that meeting. So that sort of answered the question for me. Now, you guys, when I finish talking, my final question is, did you give anybody else money to go to the DNC or maybe the Republican National Convention, or was it just at Westmore? There was something else I wanted to say. But Westmore has not come out against this. He met with them in December, and what's a New Jersey power company giving to a Maryland governor money to go to the Democratic National Convention? It's all about deceit. It's all about buying politicians and getting your way.
Thank you. I would just simply say we're a bipartisan company and we give to both major political parties in this country.
Say that again. I didn't hear
We're a bipartisan company and we give to both major political parties in this country.
Who did you give to for the Republicans if you're bipartisan?
So that's publicly available information, and I would ask that you have to look that one up.
Yeah.
But we're a bipartisan company, and we give to both organizations, both political parties.
Hi, my name is Diana Bergman. I currently reside in Carroll County. Okay, I'm going to share something with you guys. My husband has served in the Army for 22 years, okay, in the Army. I've been with him for 19 years, and I could tell you what hasn't been told to us as an active duty family. In times when we've been stationed in housing, that isn't even like adequate, impacting our family's health, okay? The other thing, I was recently in California. That's where we were stationed. I got a chance to serve as a appointed public commissioner representing 55 residents in the Community Advisory Committee. In California, and I'm sure you guys are aware of this, Northern California and Central California, the power company is responsible for the fires that they caused and damaged and ruined lives. The other thing that's not talked about is how those fires that happened years and almost decades ago soon impacted the health of my children, such as asthma, breathing difficulties. We saw recently, just a couple years ago, those same fires ended up traveling all the way to the East Coast and impacted the health and the quality of breathing that our families get to breathe. So now I'm hearing we're going to pick Carroll County as our forever home for the reason that it has less light pollution. It's out in the country, rural, but still close enough to settle down. And we live right close to the reservoir, which, if you're not familiar with the history, that land was not used over in Oakland Mills, and that town is literally underwater under the lake. So I'm going to finish this up here real quick. Be transparent with the public from the beginning of this process, okay? Because California has a very local control, and nobody told the residents of California that they were responsible for their utility company to burn down their homes and their forests, okay? And all I'm asking as a Maryland resident, and I'm not being hostile because I spent a lot of time in Baltimore, okay? I grew up in Baltimore County. Baltimore, that was just Baltimore's charm. It wasn't hostile. Okay? Don't be sensitive about that. But be upfront and transparent with the public. Because you think it was hard tonight, you think it was hard yesterday. They're pretty wild out there in Frederick County. Okay? And if they don't trust you from the beginning, it's really hard to get their trust later on. Because years later in California, a lot of those residents that had very local control how federal funds are spent, they don't trust from anything. There's still communities without running water. So, I also want to know, earlier it was said, there's a lot of the smaller companies providing energy to the current communities here in Maryland, and you guys don't oversee them or anything of that nature. Like, they kind of, if they shut down, they shut down. You're not responsible. If this big project is supposed to be the foundation, the background of all these energy companies coming in, how can you assure us that the future of what they're providing to Maryland is going to be safe, if they're going to update that infrastructure and maintain it, and who's going to be responsible to oversee them? Because we can't lose our homes. We can't barely breathe. There's forever chemicals in our drinking water, in our schools. That's impacting developmental health of our children. I want you guys to answer those heavy questions and be genuine and authentic with your response. Because as someone has served this country, the least that I'm asking for is transparency and the truth.
Thank you, Ms. Bergman.
Don't give us the runaround.
So, Diana, if you could just stay up there for a second. So, your first question. So, that is one of the main reasons why we're here, right? We've said it a million times. The regulatory process, which will include many of these, starts when we put the application in. But we are here to have that conversation with you. We were there in July to have that conversation and learn about things. Learn about things on the ground. Learn about what your concerns are, and then take them back to, and they won't like, but to minimize impacts as much as humanly possible. So it is part of our culture, and I know I'm gonna get booze here, at public service, right? It's in our name, and that is inherently our goal. And Diana, call us out when we're not doing it, but that is inherently our goal. I'll let Jason do the second question.
Hold on, Jason, before you speak. Okay. Because I heard you throughout the night, you responded, and you waved it like a magic shiny star. Oh, we got the federal bid. The federal government's policy are so outdated beyond decades that I saw with my own hands as far as how outdated those policies are. So keep that in mind as you think about how you're going to respond.
And that's why it's a Maryland PSC process. And then the Maryland PSC, the federal government awards it, we go to the PSC, and then the PSC comes to Carroll, Frederick, and Baltimore County. Go, Jason.
Yeah, and so to answer your question, I think your question was on the long-term maintenance, right, operations of the project. So we have probably 1,700 miles of transmission, both underground and overhead. We are a very extensive, experienced transmission company. Actually, my very first job was in our transmission construction maintenance department, in the field, meeting with property owners as we were constructing lines, farmers, homeowners, and the like. And there's always questions about that, right? How do we maintain our lines and all that? All I'll say is this line, once it's built, it's PSEG's. We are responsible for, as long as that line is up, to maintain it. In our experience, and I don't mean to tout ourselves, we are the most reliable utility in the Mid-Atlantic because we bring that experience for how to properly maintain transmission infrastructure as well as distribution. And I could speak from personal experience. Mike over here ran that department as well. We will bring that experience and those practices to Maryland, and we own that line forever. It's not just build it and hand it off to someone else. We are obligated to keep it safe and keep it safe, for as long as the line is needed.
How many years is your experience? Because that matters. Are you talking about experience of 4 years, 10 years, 20, 30?
Yeah,
because I want to make sure this is maintained, not just 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line.
Yeah, so personally, so as a company, we were founded in 1903, but I know you're talking about my personal experience. So I've been in it about 20 years. And we have a lot of folks who have been in it a lot, longer
I have
than me.
over
but-
34 years experience in transmission.
Yeah, but we can't combine. We're not doing any kind of crazy math here.
No,
your
I have-
experience,
I have
the
34
company's
years.
experience, their
About
accountability
100
system that they have in place, the company's experience.
We're one of the, BG is a founding electric and gas company in the U.S., and so is PSEG, 1903. We have operating experience well over 100 years.
How many casualties or any kind of damage that's caused, any kind of casualties in that history and time that you've been operational?
I don't know that. All I can say is that my experience with the transmission system is we maintain it very well, I'll say, and I don't know, Mike, I haven't seen anything,
Ms.
but I don't
Bergman,
have that answer. So
These are
thank
excellent
you.
questions. You can feel free. They can reach back out to
Do
you,
you have
talk
a
to you
question?
individually. I don't have a question. However,
How do you
we're 10
plan
minutes past
them
late.
to reach out to me? You didn't provide on the form an opportunity for me to provide my contact information.
So we have, and we did earlier, and email us or call us. You have the email address, you have the 800 number. There are business cards in the back and at the front that have all that. I have Diana written down on my notes. If you give me your last name, if you don't feel comfortable, but just put attention Jim, and I'll make sure we follow up. But I just do want to say, safety is our number
here's
one
my phone number,
priority.
410, write it down, 410-615-1792. And a lot of our legislators in Baltimore County, they have my cell number, so you could call them up and ask them.
Diana, 410-615-1792.
Yeah, give
Thank
me a
you.
call. Here's my email.
Diana,
write it down.
We're over right now. So can we please get to the next question?
ERGMAN0@gmail.com. The reason why I say this and
Ms.
I put this
Bergman,
out here,
I
no, you're
apologize.
gonna listen.
We
Don't
have
interrupt.
3 people behind
Don't
you
interrupt.
still.
Because it shouldn't be for us to contact you when you guys have the responsibility to do everything possible to reach out to the residents that you plan to impact even long time after you're gone. Okay? That's what I'm getting at.
If we can just be a little bit mindful of our time because we're way over already. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, hello. Christine Bulbul from Howard County. I am supporting my neighbors up north, Frederick, Carroll, and Baltimore, and I am saying no to MPRP, and I am writing every single delegation and telling them to say no to this project. I have written a lot of letters, and trust me, I am telling them all exactly the crap that's going on here, and they're getting an earful. So I want to know, why have you bisected farms from corner to corner, from north, south, and east, west? Why do you think that's a good way to do or deal with a farm? Do you know how difficult it is to operate with those lines that way? You bisected the entire farm, and it is wrong. I also want to know, what route optimization software did you use? Is it proprietary or does it have a name? To run the route from Baltimore to Frederick, what software did you use?
So ultimately, what we do is we put all of the data into a GIS plot. We use Esri. Esri you may have heard of it. It's a widely known, I'm sorry. Esri is one of the main programs that we use, but ultimately we rely on our technical subject matter experts in various different areas
I can
to come
tell.
up with the route. So
What #1 constraint was it for the algorithm? Low cost?
So
Were there
there's
4 other constraints? What were the other constraints besides low cost? What constraints did you put in there?
So cost in our routing criteria, what we used is public. We put it on our site. Cost is not directly in there. What I will say is one of the main criteria we use is not directly going over people's homes. which is which is how we came to the route we have. But ultimately, I think it's 60, 70 criteria, but
Well,
it is on our website. So.
I'm looking at the routes and I'm thinking you put some crap in there. As a software engineer, I can tell there's crap in that software. So, I want to know which one of you told somebody here that 15 feet is okay for that line next to their house. Who said that? Who said that? Did somebody tell somebody here that 15 feet with a high voltage line was okay to the house? Do you know if you ask Google AI, what's the distance for a 1500 volt line? It tells you the distance is 700 to 1,000 feet. So our data centers that we're feeding energy, they're telling us you're basically wrong. And every single time you route that thing next to somebody's house, you better make sure it's 700 to 1,000 feet away. I don't think you've done that, but you should do it.
Did you have an answer for that? No? No comment? Okay. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next two folks because we have two more questions.
How much old growth forest is being ripped out? Do you have the acreage? Do you know?
Not
You
here
don't
on
know?
stage. Not here on stage.
You don't know. Okay, you don't know. Well, you know what? We've calculated that. You know? And so basically, it's 780 acres and basically 31,746 tons of CO2 are not going to be sucked out of the atmosphere when you rip that out. Very good. Bravo. Way to have a great culture in there. Really good. And,
Thank you, ma'am.
Guess what? CO2. CO2. It's another close to 31,000 as well. You ought to do the math. You should figure this out. You should do the math because there are a lot of smart people that know how to do math. And we figured it out.
Ma'am, I hear your concern. We definitely need to hear it, but we really do need to move on because we still have two folks behind you in order to get home tonight.
Okay.
We're
One
already
last question.
15 minutes past
One
our
last
time.
question.
We really need to move on.
PSEG is being taken to court by New Jersey because you're sold land that you got money to build a row. And now New Jersey is taking you to court. That's impressive. Great culture. And I'm done now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Sir, the gentleman right behind, next in line is the last person. We can't take any more questions. I made sure that after him. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, hold on. You should let everybody in this line finish.
Well, we could be here all night, but we do have an email.
It doesn't
We
matter
have phone
because you
numbers
have
to be able to
destroyed
call.
lives since July.
Ma'am,
So
in
you
order to be
and your
respectful,
kindergarten bullshit
Whoa,
can
whoa,
stop.
whoa, whoa, whoa,
Ma'am,
whoa,
in
whoa,
order to
whoa.
be
No. You don't say that to Teresa.
You can calm down.
I can call. I didn't use that type of language.
Question. If people do not get to speak that are on the list, would you put them on the list first for tomorrow?
Yeah, sure.
Do that. Give us a copy of that list as well. Secondly,
No.
when you tell people you can't reconductor, why don't you mention it's because you do not own towers or lines or cables in the state of Maryland in order for you to reconductor? PSEG owns nothing in Maryland. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The rest of the stuff they tell you is all lies. Every time Jason and Jim open their mouths, they are telling you a sales pitch. It is not true, it is not accurate, and the media, stop reporting the propaganda. Start digging in to the myths, truths they are telling you. You want to be on our side? Report the truth. Report the facts. This is not about reliability. This is all about greed. This is all about money in their pockets. It is not about us. We aren't even human to these pieces of flesh that are on that stage. Remember it. If you're not already a member, become a member at Stop MPRP Inc. We need to raise as much money so we can kick their ass. Just say no.
Sir, if you can give us the last question, thank you.
I'm Jason Myers. I'm a lifelong farmer here in the county. I got a lot of frustration with this project. It starts with the fact that the two groups I'd like to be here tonight aren't here. One would be the PSC, who's going to make the decision on whether this project goes forward, and the other is the PJM, who actually put this project out on bids. I'm frustrated in the fact that PJM is 670 members. It's comprised of the generation owners, the transmission owners, other suppliers of electricity, electric distributors, and the last group is some end-use customers. So as that reads, 4/5 or 80% of that organization is the electrical companies and all the people that are making money in the electrical business. When we look at this, they have a 10-member board, and they call themselves a nonprofit, and it's kind of like being a crop farmer this year. I think that we need to look at this as constituents, and the best route is to get behind Senator West and his efforts and our local representatives' efforts to open up some of the closing electrical plants, as well as look at other solutions in the meantime to fix this problem. I think that this 70 miles is just a Band-Aid. It's not correcting the problem. Maryland has 50% of the power transmitted in the state. We need to get that amount up. And if you drive down to Dowds, that's where they need to build a power plant.
Thank you, Jason.
Sir.
Thank you, Carroll County. Appreciate your questions and your time today.
We'll be in tomorrow's event. Thank you.